They ordered 3 bottles of vintage champagne before I even sat down. My sister smirked, announcing I was footing the $7,000 bill because family share success. I didn't argue. I just went to the bathroom, paid for my salad, and walked out the back door. This is where the real fireworks start, and trust me, you won't believe the voicemail they left me 5 minutes later. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the fallout. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The migraine was pulsing behind my left eye, a steady, rhythmic throb that felt like a tiny hammer chipping away at my skull. It was the kind of headache you earn after 6 months of 60-hour work weeks, missed meals, and sleeping with your laptop open on your chest. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment complex, the engine off, just listening to the ticking of the cooling metal and the blood rushing in my ears. I should have felt elated. I should have been blasting music and calling everyone I knew. 2 hours ago, the regional VP had shaken my hand, slid a heavy cream-colored envelope across the mahogany desk, and told me that the director of operations position was mine. It came with a title change, a corner office, and a salary that, frankly, scared me a little. It was the culmination of 5 years of grinding, of being the first one in and the last one out, of eating vending machine dinners while my friends went to concerts. But instead of joy, I felt a profound, hollow exhaustion, and beneath that, a creeping dread. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. The screen lit up with the name Claire. I stared at it. The vibration rattled against the plastic, an angry, demanding sound. I knew exactly why she was calling. I had made the mistake of texting our family group chat earlier in the day. Big news coming. Finally got the result I worked for. I hadn't mentioned money, I hadn't mentioned the title, but Claire had a sixth sense for cash flow. It was like a shark smelling a drop of blood in the ocean from 3 miles away. If I had news and it was big, she assumed it meant payday. I took a deep breath, rubbed my temples, and swiped to answer. "Hello," I rasped, my voice dry. "Isabella, oh my God, finally?" Claire's voice was high-pitched, piercing through the speaker. "We've been waiting for you to call. Dad said you got the promotion. Did you get the promotion?" "I did," I said, trying to muster some enthusiasm. "It's official. I start the transition on Monday." "I knew it," she shrieked. I could hear rustling in the background like she was moving things around. "I told Michael," I said, "Isabella is too stubborn to fail. Look, we are so proud of you. Seriously, Mom is crying." "Are you crying, Sophia?" "Yeah, she's tearing up." A small, fragile hope bloomed in my chest. Maybe I was being cynical. Maybe they really were just happy for me. I had been so lonely lately, so isolated by the workload. The idea of my family actually celebrating me, rather than what I could do for them, felt like a warm blanket. "Thanks, Claire," I said, my voice softening. "That means a lot. I'm just pulling in home. I'm going to crash." "Crash?" she laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "You are absolutely not crashing. You're the woman of the hour. We are celebrating tonight." "Claire, I'm exhausted," I pleaded. "I haven't slept more than 4 hours a night all week. Can we do dinner this weekend? Maybe just order pizza at Dad's." "Pizza?" she scoffed. "Isabella, you're a director now. Directors don't eat pepperoni on the couch. We booked a table at L'Orangerie. 7 o'clock. Don't be late and dress up. It's a big night." L'Orangerie. The name dropped into my stomach like a stone. It was the most exclusive, pretentious, and wildly expensive restaurant in the city. The kind of place where the water menu had prices. "Claire, that place is impossible to get into," I said, "and it's incredibly expensive." "Don't worry about the reservation, I pulled some strings," she said breezily. "Just get here, we're already en route. Love you." The line went dead before I could say no. I sat there, staring at the dashboard. My intuition was screaming at me. It was screaming that this wasn't a celebration, it was a setup. But I was tired, and I was desperate for that connection, for that validation that I was more than just a paycheck to them. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red-rimmed, my skin pale. I sighed, started the car, and backed out of the spot. I didn't know it then, but I was driving toward an emotional cliff edge, and the fall would hurt far more than the exhaustion ever could. The betrayal wasn't just in the bill, it was in the smile she gave me while she ran it up. The valet at El Orangery looked at my Honda Civic with a mixture of pity and disdain, as if the car might leak oil onto his pristine cobblestones just out of spite. I handed him the keys, smoothed down the skirt of my work suit, which was professional but certainly not gala-ready, and walked toward the heavy oak doors. Inside, the air smelled of truffles, aged mahogany, and money. It was dimly lit, the kind of lighting designed to make jewelry sparkle and wrinkles vanish. A hostess with cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass looked up from her podium. "Reservation for?" she asked, her tone implying that I was probably in the wrong building. "It might be under Claire, or maybe Michael," I said, feeling out of place. "Ah yes, the private alcove. Your party is already seated." Private alcove? My stomach tightened. That wasn't just a table, that was a room fee. I followed her through the main dining room, navigating a maze of white tablecloths and hushed conversations. As we approached the back of the restaurant, I heard them before I saw them. A loud, raucous laugh echoed from behind a velvet curtain. It was Claire's laugh. The hostess pulled back the curtain, and I stopped dead in my tracks. I had expected my parents, Michael and Sophia, and my sister, Claire. Maybe, just maybe, Claire's boyfriend of the week. That would be 4 or 5 people. Instead, I was looking at a banquet. There were at least 12 people squeezed around the long, oval table. My parents were there, sitting at the head like royalty. Claire was to their right, but then there were others. Aunt Deborah, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Claire's best friend, a girl named Jessica who had bullied me in high school. 2 men I didn't even recognize, friends of Claire, maybe, and Uncle Jerry, who was currently loudly recounting a story about his gallstones to a waiter who looked like he wanted to die. "She's here," Claire shouted, throwing her hands up. She was wearing a new dress, something sequined and clearly designer. "The big shot has arrived." "Isabella," my dad, Michael, boomed. He didn't stand up. He just gestured vaguely with a wine glass that was already half empty. Sit, you're late. We started without you." I didn't know everyone was coming," I stammered, taking the only empty seat at the far end of the table, miles away from my parents. "The more the merrier," my mom, Sophia, chimed in. She gave me a tight, fluttery wave. "You look tired, honey. You really should wear more concealer under those eyes." "Thanks, Mom," I muttered, sinking into the chair. A waiter appeared instantly at my elbow. "Champagne, madam. The table is enjoying the 98 Dom Perignon." I looked at the center of the table. 3 empty bottles were already upturned in the ice bucket. A 4th was being poured. I did the math in my head. That was easily $2,000 in alcohol, and I hadn't even unfolded my napkin. "Just water, please," I said quietly. "Oh, don't be a buzzkill, Izzy," Claire called out from across the table. "You're celebrating, pour her a glass gherkin." I watched the golden liquid fill the flute in front of me. I looked at the faces around the table. They weren't looking at me with pride. They were looking at me with hunger. They were looking at me the way a pack of wolves looks at a wounded deer that has just stumbled into the clearing. My dad leaned back, his face flushed. "So, tell us, how much is the bump? We talking 6 figures, high 6 figures?" The table went silent. Even Uncle Jerry stopped talking about his medical issues. 12 pairs of eyes locked onto me. "Ideally, Dad, I'd like to not talk about finances at dinner," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we just have a nice meal?" "Don't be coy," Claire sneered playfully, taking a sip of her wine. "We all know you made it. Stop acting like you're still one of us peasants." I forced a smile, but my hand gripped the silverware so hard my knuckles turned white. They thought they had me cornered. They thought my desire for their approval would outweigh my self-respect. They thought I would just smile and nod and swipe the card because I was the good daughter. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I didn't get to be a director of operations by letting people walk all over me. I got there by spotting inefficiencies and cutting dead weight. And looking around this table, all I saw was dead weight. To understand why I didn't just flip the table right then and there, you have to understand the history. I had been the family safety net since I was 22. When Dad retired early, which was a polite way of saying he got pushed out for refusing to learn how to use a computer, I covered the mortgage for 6 months so they wouldn't lose the house. When Mom needed that essential surgery that turned out to be purely cosmetic dental work, I paid the deductible. And Claire was a bottomless pit. Claire was 28, 4 years younger than me, but she acted like a perpetual teenager. She had tried to be a fashion blogger, then a DJ, then a life coach. Currently, she was calling herself a brand curator, which, as far as I could tell, meant she bought expensive clothes she couldn't afford and posted photos of them on Instagram. I had paid her rent. I had paid her car insurance. I had bailoed her out of credit card debt twice. And every single time, the narrative was the same: Isabella is the lucky one. Isabella is the boring corporate drone. Isabella doesn't have a life, so she might as well help us have ours. I was the resource, not the daughter, not the sister, the resource. The waiter returned to take our orders. This was the moment I knew for a fact that this wasn't a celebration. It was a raid. "I'll start with the seafood tower," Claire announced, not even looking at the menu. "The Grand Royal one, for the table, or maybe 2 of them." She looked at Dad. "2," Michael grunted, "and the Wagyu tartare." "Excellent choice, sir," the waiter said, scribbling furiously. "For the main," Claire continued, running her finger down the price column, not the food column. I watched her eyes. She wasn't looking for what she liked, she was looking for the highest number. "I'll have the lobster thermidor, and add the truffle shaving supplement." "I'll have the same," Jessica the bully chimed in, "and another bottle of that champagne." "Make it 2 bottles," Dad added, "and bring me the ribeye, the dry-aged one, rare." "I'll just have the garden salad and the roasted chicken," I said when the waiter finally got to me. "Chicken?" Mom laughed nervously. "Oh, Isabella, live a little, you can afford steak now." "I like the chicken, Mom," I said firmly. Once the waiter left, the conversation immediately shifted away from my promotion. No one asked what my new job entailed. No one asked about the projects I'd led. Instead, Claire launched into a monologue about her brand. "I'm thinking of doing a pop-up shop in the city," she said, gesturing with a forkful of crab that had just arrived on a tower of ice the size of a small car. "But the overhead is a nightmare. I need seed capital, investors who really believe in the vision." She stared pointedly at me. "Is that so?" I said, picking at a bread roll. "Yeah," Claire said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "It's about 20 grand to start, but the ROI would be huge. I figured, since you're swimming in it now, maybe we could partner up. Silent partner, of course, you wouldn't have to do anything." "I'm not investing in a pop-up shop, Claire," I said calmly. The table went quiet again. The air pressure dropped. "Excuse me," Claire's smile faltered. I said no, I have my own financial goals. Buying a house, saving for retirement. Michael slammed his hand down on the table, rattling the silverware. "Isabella, that is your sister. You just got a massive raise, don't be greedy." "It's not greed, Dad. It's my money," I said. "It's family money," he corrected, his face reddening. "We raised you, we supported you." "I paid off your mortgage, Dad," I reminded him, my voice low. "I paid for your car." "That's in the past," he snapped. "Stop keeping score. God, you're always so difficult. This is why you're single, you know that? You count every penny and every favor. No man wants a woman who acts like an accountant." I felt the sting of tears, but I blinked them back. This was the dynamic. Michael the enabler, the patriarch who contributed nothing but demands. Claire the golden child who could do no wrong. Sophia the quiet accomplice who benefited from the chaos. And me, the bank. Then Claire dropped the bomb. The main courses were arriving. Lobster, steak, truffles. The smell was overwhelming. As the waiter set down a massive plate of Wagyu beef in front of Uncle Jerry, Claire clinked her spoon against her glass. "Attention, everyone," she beamed. "I just want to make a quick toast." She stood up, looking radiant and predatory. "To my big sister, Isabella, for working so hard, and for treating us all to this incredible meal tonight. Seriously, Izzy, you're paying for everyone's meal. You got that promotion, right? It's the least you could do." My heart stopped. I hadn't agreed to anything. I looked around the table. Everyone was smiling, raising their glasses. The waiters paused. I started. "You got that promotion, right?" Claire repeated, louder this time, her smile tight and warning. It wasn't a question, it was a command. "Stop being difficult," Dad muttered into his wine glass, not even looking at me. "Just pay the bill, Isabella. Don't embarrass us in front of the guests." I looked at the menu on the table. I did a quick mental calculation. The wine alone was $5,000. The food was another $2,000. With tip, this was a $10,000 dinner. They had invited strangers. They had ordered the most expensive items. And they had announced I was paying without even asking me. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was a quiet, final click, like a lock turning. I looked at C. Lair, I looked at Dad. I smiled. It was the best acting performance of my life. "You know what?" I said, my voice steady and sweet. "You're right, it is a celebration." "Excellent," Claire purred, clapping her hands together like a seal that had just been tossed a fish. "I knew you'd step up. Waiter, another bottle, the vintage." The table erupted in cheers. Dad patted the table, nodding with a smug satisfaction, as if he had just successfully brokered a peace treaty rather than bullied his daughter into bankruptcy. Mom wiped a tear from her eye, tears of relief, probably, that she wouldn't have to dip into her own retirement fund. "I'll be right back," I said, standing up. "I just need to use the restroom before the next course comes." "Don't take too long," Claire warned, taking a sip of her fresh champagne. "We need to discuss that investment." I picked up my purse. "I won't." I walked away from the table. I could feel their eyes on my back, but I didn't turn around. I kept my pace steady, not too fast, not too slow. I walked past the bathrooms, down the long, plush corridor lined with black and white photos of celebrities who had dined here, and straight to the Maitre D's station near the front entrance. The man standing there was tall, impeccable, and looked like he suffered fools for a living but charged them extra for it. He looked up as I approached. "Is everything to your satisfaction, madam?" he asked, his accent vague but expensive. "The food is delicious," I said, leaning in slightly to lower my voice. "But I have a slightly complicated situation regarding the bill, and I'd like to handle it discreetly so as not to disturb the other guests." He raised an eyebrow. "Of course, how may I assist?" "I am currently seated at the large party in the alcove, the table under the name Claire." "Ah, yes, the celebration." "Correct. Here is the situation," I said, pulling my Amex from my wallet. I kept my voice calm, professional, the same voice I used when firing incompetent vendors at work. "I am leaving now. I would like to pay for exactly what I consumed. 1 garden salad, 1 roasted chicken, 1 sparkling water, nothing else." The maitre d' paused. He looked at me, then at the computer screen, then back at me. "And the remainder of the bill, the champagne, the seafood towers, the wagyu." "That is the responsibility of the host, Claire, and the gentleman sitting at the head of the table, Michael," I said clearly. "I did not order those items. I did not consume those items. And I did not agree to pay for them. I am authorizing a charge only for my own meal. Please run it now, add a 25% tip on my portion, and provide me with a printed receipt." He hesitated. "Madam, it is highly unusual to split a bill of this magnitude in this manner mid-meal. Usually, the table." "I understand it's unusual." I cut in, my gaze hardening. "But if you present me with a bill for $7,000, I will contest the charge with my credit card company as fraud. I am offering to pay my legal share right now. If you decline, I will walk out without paying anything, and you can explain to the owner why you turned down guaranteed revenue." He studied my face. He saw the exhaustion, but he also saw the resolve. I wasn't a drunk patron trying to dine and dash. I was a woman executing a business transaction. "Very well," he said stiffly. He tapped on the screen. "Garden salad, roasted chicken, sparkling water. Your total comes to $68.50. I tapped my card, the machine beeped, approved. "Thank you," I said, taking the receipt and folding it carefully into my wallet. "One last thing. Please do not present the remaining bill to the table until they ask for it. Let them enjoy their dessert." "Understood," he said. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, respect, maybe, or perhaps just amusement at the carnage that was about to unfold. I walked out the front door, the cool night air hitting my face like a splash of cold water. I handed my ticket to the valet. "Already leaving?" he asked. "Emergency," I said. As I waited for my Honda, I didn't just stand there. I pulled out my phone. The trap was set, but I needed to seal the exits. I opened my banking app. Years ago, I had given Claire a secondary credit card on my account for emergencies only. She rarely used it, but she had it. Status active, action lock card, reason lost stolen. I swiped, the digital toggle turned gray. Next, the family Uber account. I was the primary payer. Dad used it to go to his poker nights. Remove payment method, delete account. I worked with the speed and precision of a surgeon. Netflix password, changed. Amazon Prime family sharing, revoked. The recurring transfer of $200 I sent to Mom every month for her prescriptions, canceled. By the time the valet pulled my car around, I had digitally severed every financial artery connecting me to them. I got into the driver seat, tossed my phone onto the passenger seat, and drove. I didn't go home. I knew they would come there. Instead, I drove to the one place they would never look for me, my office. I had a key card, a couch in my new suite, and a security guard named Ralph who liked me a hell of a lot more than my father did. As I merged onto the highway, the clock on the dashboard read 8:45 p.m. They would be finishing the main course. Dessert would be ordered soon. The bomb was ticking, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one jumping on it to save them. I was sitting in my new office, the lights off, watching the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was quiet here, peaceful. I had a cup of office coffee in my hand. It tasted terrible, but it tasted like freedom. At 9:30 p.m., my phone lit up. It started with a single text from Claire. "Where are you? Dessert is coming." 2 minutes later. "Izzy, did you fall in lol? Come back, Dad is ordering cognac." 9:45 p.m. The tone changed. "Where the hell are you? The waiter said you left." 9:48 p.m. "Isabella, answer your phone." Then the calls started. First Claire, then Dad, then Mom, then Claire again. The phone buzzed and danced across the mahogany desk like a possessed beetle. I watched it, feeling a strange detachment. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my hands were steady. At 9:55 p.m., the voicemail notification popped up. Then another. Then a text from Michael, "Pick up the phone or so help me God, Isabella." I took a deep breath. I needed to hear it. I needed to hear the reality of what they were to me, stripped of all the polite veneers. I picked up the phone as it started ringing again. It was Claire. I swiped answer and put it on speaker. "Isabella," she shrieked. The sound was distorted, loud, and chaotic. I could hear background noise, clinking glass, a low murmur of other diners, and the sharp, anxious energy of a panic attack. "Where are you? What is going on?" "I'm at work," I said calmly. "Work? You're at work?" She sounded like she was hyperventilating. "We are at the restaurant. The waiter just brought the bill." "Oh," I took a sip of my coffee. "How was the lobster?" "Don't play games with me," she screamed. I heard a hush fall over the background noise. She was making a scene. "The bill is $6,800, Isabella. $6,000. "That sounds right," I said. "You ordered a lot of vintage champagne." You need to give them your card number over the phone," she stammered, her voice trembling with rage. Right now, the manager is standing here. He's looking at us like we're criminals. Put him on speaker, I'm handing the phone to him. No, I said. The word hung in the air, heavy and absolute. What did you say? I said no. I paid for my meal, Claire. I have the receipt. I paid for my salad and my chicken. I did not agree to pay for your party. I did not invite your friends. I did not order 3 bottles of Dom Perignon. But you're the director, she yelled. You have the money, we celebrated you. You didn't celebrate me, I said, my voice dropping an octave, cold and hard. You ordered the most expensive things on the menu because you thought I was a blank check. You invited Jessica, who made my life hell in high school. You invited Uncle Jerry, who I haven't seen in a decade. That wasn't a party for me. It was a harvest. And I'm done being the crop. There was a scuffle on the other end, and then Dad's voice boomed through the speaker. He was breathless, likely red-faced. Isabella Marie, he roared. You listen to me right now. You are embarrassing this family. You are humiliating us. There are people staring. You will pay this bill, and you will do it now, or you are no daughter of mine. Is that the ultimatum? I asked. Pay $6,000 or lose my father. Yes, he shouted. You selfish, ungrateful little. Then I guess I'm an orphan, I said. Good luck with the bill, Michael. Wait, his voice cracked, the bluster instantly replaced by panic. Isabella, listen, I don't have this kind of limit on my cards. You know that, the pension, it's not enough. They're talking about calling the police. They said something about theft of services. You can't let them arrest your father. You should have thought about that before you ordered the dry-aged ribeye, I said. Maybe Claire can pay for it with her brand money. I don't have it. Claire was back, crying now, loud, ugly sobs. My cards are maxed out. Isabella, please, I'll pay you back, I swear. Like you paid me back for the car. Like you paid me back for the rent. This is different. They're going to call the cops. Then I suggest you start calling people who actually care about you, I said. Maybe Jessica can chip in, or Uncle Jerry. Goodbye, Claire. I hung up. I stared at the phone. My hand was shaking now, not from fear but from the adrenaline crash. I had done it. I had actually said no. I sat there for a long time, watching the city lights. I wondered what was happening at El Orangery. Were they pooling their cash? Was Uncle Jerry frantically calling his bank? Were they being escorted out by security? A part of me, the part that had been trained since childhood to be the fixer, wanted to call back, wanted to save them one last time. But then I remembered the smirk on Claire's face when she ordered the tower. I remembered Dad telling me to stop being difficult. I turned my phone off. The silence didn't last long. When I turned my phone back on the next morning, the digital onslaught was waiting. 37 missed calls. 64 text messages, but it was the social media notifications that made my blood run cold. Claire hadn't just gone home and licked her wounds. She had gone on the offensive. I opened Facebook. There, pinned to the top of her profile, was a long, rambling post tagged with betrayal and toxic family. I never thought I'd have to share something this personal, it began. But last night, my own sister, a high-powered executive making huge money, invited our elderly parents and me out for a celebration dinner. She ordered everything, drank the wine, and then she ran away. She literally sneaked out the back door and left our parents with a $7,000 bill they couldn't pay. My dad almost had a heart attack from the stress. The police were called. We were humiliated. It turns out, money really does change people. Please keep my family in your prayers as we deal with this narcissist. Below it were hundreds of comments. OMG, that is disgusting behavior. Wow, corporate greed really rots the soul. So sorry you had to go through that, hun. Stay strong. My stomach churned. She was controlling the narrative. She was painting me as the villain before I could even open my mouth. I checked my LinkedIn. 2 messages from random people who had seen the post, because Claire had tagged my company, of course. Is this how a director operates? Shameful. She was trying to torch my career. I sat at my kitchen table, the coffee turning cold in my mug. This was war. If I didn't fight back, this story would stick. It would follow me. But arguing on Facebook was a losing game. I needed facts. I needed leverage that was bigger than a dinner bill. I thought about Claire's desperate plea on the phone. I don't have it. My cards are maxed out. Claire didn't have a job. She hadn't had a real job in 4 years. Mom and Dad gave her some money, sure, but not enough to max out credit cards. Unless. I opened my laptop. I had cut them off last night, but I hadn't done a deep dive into the past. I logged into the credit monitoring service I hadn't checked in 6 months. I scrolled through the report. Mortgage, paid. Car loan, paid. Chase Sapphire Reserve, balance $12,400. I froze. I didn't have a Chase Sapphire Reserve. I clicked on the details. The card had been opened 18 months ago, the billing address, my parents' house, the authorized user, Claire. I scrolled down. Personal loan, SoFi, $25,000, outstanding, opened 3 months ago. My heart hammered against my ribs. The signatures on the applications were digital, but the email address used for verification was Isabella, operations@gmail.com. It looked like my email, but it wasn't. My email was Isabella Ops. They had created a fake email account. They had used my social security number, which Dad had, of course, from when he did my taxes years ago. They had been taking out loans and credit cards in my name to fund their lifestyle. The pop-up shop, the designer clothes, the vacations, they weren't just mooching cash I gave them, they were stealing my future. I felt a cold, hard rage settle in my chest, displacing the fear. The dinner bill was a distraction. This was a felony. My phone rang. It was Michael. I stared at the screen. I needed to answer this. I needed to get them on record. I hit record on my other device and answered the phone. Isabella, his voice was ragged, tired. He sounded like a broken man. We need to talk, now. I saw the Facebook post, Dad, I said quietly. We can take it down, he said quickly, too quickly. Claire was upset. She overreacted. But we can fix this. We just need to sit down. The restaurant, we had to leave Grandpa's watch as collateral. They gave us 48 hours to come back with the cash or they file charges. Grandpa's watch? I asked. That watch was the only heirloom we had. Yes, it's a mess, Izzy. Look, just come over. We'll have a family meeting. We'll work out a payment plan. You pay the restaurant and we'll figure out how to pay you back over time. Just delete the screenshots you have and we'll delete the post. Clean slate. He was bargaining. He sounded desperate, but there was something else in his voice. Fear. He knew I would look into things eventually. Okay, I said. I'll come over. Good. Good girl, he breathed. Come for lunch, 1 o'clock. I'll be there, I said. And Dad, make sure Claire is there too. She is. She's right here. Perfect. I hung up. I spent the next 3 hours printing. I printed the credit report. I printed the loan documents. I printed the fake email verification logs I managed to trace. I printed the bank statements showing transfers from the fraudulent loans into Claire's personal checking account. I organized them into a neat, black binder. Then I called a friend of mine, not a friend from the old days, a friend from the new life, David. He was the company's corporate counsel. David, I said when he answered. Hypothetically, if someone committed identity theft against me to the tune of $40,000 and I had proof, what's the move? Hypothetically, David laughed darkly. You walk into the room with a settlement agreement and a police report. You put both on the table, and you let them choose which one you file. Can you draft a settlement agreement in an hour? For you, I'll do it in 30 minutes. Send me the details. I got into my car at 12:30 p.m. The binder sat on the passenger seat next to me. They thought I was coming to write a check for the lobster. They thought they could guilt me back into submission with threats of social ostracization. They thought they were dealing with Isabella, the daughter. They were about to meet Isabella, the director. The driveway of my childhood home was cracked. I hadn't noticed it before, or maybe I had just chosen not to see it. Weeds were pushing through the concrete, widening the fissures, slowly breaking the foundation apart. It was a perfect metaphor for what was waiting inside. I parked my Civic behind Dad's sedan, the one I had paid off 3 years ago. I took a moment to center myself. I checked my reflection in the mirror. I didn't look like the tired, desperate daughter who used to come here seeking approval. My blazer was sharp. My hair was pulled back tight. I looked like the person who fired people for cause. I grabbed the black binder. It felt heavy in my hand, weighted with the truth they had tried to bury. When I opened the front door, the smell hit me, lemon polish and old dust. It was the smell of stagnation. They were all sitting at the dining room table, exactly where I expected them to be. It was a tableau of staged misery. Mom was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, though they looked dry. Dad was sitting at the head of the table, his posture rigid, a half-empty glass of scotch near his hand. Claire was slumped in her chair, arms crossed, looking more annoyed than remorseful. "You're late," Dad grunted, not looking up. "I'm on time," I said, closing the door behind me. The latch clicked loudly in the silence. "Did you bring the checkbook?" Claire asked, snapping her gum. The manager called again. They said if we don't pay by 5 p.m., they're selling Grandpa's watch to a pawn shop to cover the debt. "That would be tragic," I said, walking to the table. I didn't sit down. I stood at the opposite end, towering over them. "Tragic," Mom let out a wail. "Isabella, how can you be so cold? That watch was your grandfather's legacy." "Then maybe you shouldn't have bet it on a lobster dinner you couldn't afford," I replied calmly. Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. We are not here to argue semantics. We are here to fix this mess you caused." I raised an eyebrow. "You ran away," Claire shouted, pointing a manicured finger at me. "You embarrassed us. You made us look like broke losers in front of my friends." "You are broke, Claire," I said. "That's the point." "We are a family," Dad roared, standing up to match my height. His face was a mottled purple. "And families help each other. Now, here is the plan. You are going to pay the restaurant bill today to get the watch back. Then, you are going to transfer $5,000 to your mother's account to cover the distress you've caused. And you are going to issue a public apology on Facebook saying there was a misunderstanding with your bank." He looked at me with total expectation. It was the same look he gave me when I was 10, and he wanted me to lie to the neighbors about why our power got cut off. He expected compliance. He expected the good daughter to fold. "No," I said. The room went deadly silent. "Excuse me," Dad whispered. "No, I'm not paying the restaurant. I'm not transferring money. And I'm certainly not apologizing." "Then get out," Dad spat. "Get out of my house. And don't come back until you realize what loyalty means." "I'm not leaving yet," I said. "Not until we discuss the contents of this." I dropped the black binder onto the table. It landed with a heavy, authoritative thud that made the china cabinet rattle. "What is that?" Mom asked, her voice trembling. "That," I said, opening the cover, "is a record of the last 18 months of your financial activities." I fly. Peep head to the first page. I slid the paper across the polished wood toward Claire. "Chase Sapphire Reserve," I read aloud. "Opened November 2024. Authorized user, Claire. Balance, $12,400. Status, delinquent." Claire's face went white. She stopped chewing her gum. I don't know what that is," she stammered. "Don't you?" I pulled out the next sheet. "This is the IP address log for the application. It matches the Wi-Fi router in this house. And this," I pointed to a highlighted line, "is the recovery email address. Isabella, operations@gmail.com. A fake account created 2 minutes before the application was submitted." Dad sat down slowly. He looked from the paper to Claire, then to me, but he didn't look surprised. He looked caught. "And here," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "is the SoFi personal loan. $25,000, deposited into a joint account under Michael and Claire." I slid the bank statement across the table. It showed the deposit. and it showed the withdrawals: Nordstrom, Delta Airlines, DraftKings, BMW lease payment. "You stole my identity," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a razor. "You used my social security number, my credit history, and my good name to fund your delusions of grandeur. That is roughly $40,000 of fraud. That is a felony. In fact, given the amount, it's grand larceny." "Isabella, wait," Mom gasped, clutching her chest. We intended to pay it back. It was a bridge loan, just until Claire's business took off." "Claire doesn't have a business, Mom," I shouted, finally letting the anger break through. "She has an Instagram account and a shopping addiction, and you let her rob me." "We didn't rob you," Dad yelled, though his voice lacked its usual power. "We borrowed it. You have plenty. You just got promoted. Why are you being so greedy?" "It's not borrowing if you don't ask," I snapped. "It's theft." I reached into the binder and pulled out a stapled document. It was the settlement agreement David had drafted. "Here is the reality," I said, placing the document in the center of the table. "I have two options right now. Option A, I walk out that door, drive to the police station, and file a formal report for identity theft and fraud. I have the evidence. I have the IP logs. I have the bank trails. Claire will go to prison. Dad, you will likely be charged as an accomplice. You will lose the house to legal fees." Claire let out a strangled sob. "Dad, do something." "Option B," I said, ignoring her. "You sign this." Dad looked at the document. "What is this?" "It is a legally binding admission of debt," I explained. "It states that the debt on these cards and loans belongs to you and Claire. It removes my liability. It states that you will refinance these loans into your own names within 30 days. And it states that you will never, ever ask me for a single penny again." "We can't refinance," Dad said, his head in his hands. "My credit score, it's shot." "Then you sell things," I said coldly. "Sell the other car, sell the furniture, sell Claire's designer bags. I don't care how you do it, but you get my name off your debt." "And the restaurant bill," Claire sniffled. "What about the watch?" I looked at them. This was the final test. They were still hoping I would save them from the immediate fire. "The restaurant bill is your problem," I said. "If you want Grandpa's watch back, I suggest you return those shoes you're wearing, Claire. I hear they go for $1,000 on resale sites." "You can't be serious," Claire cried. "You're ruining my life." "You ruined your own life," I said. "I'm just refusing to pay for the wreckage." I took a pen from my pocket and set it down next to the document. "Sign it," I commanded, "or I call the police. I have them on speed dial." I pulled out my phone and held it up, my thumb hovering over the screen. Dad looked at me. For the first time, he didn't see a child. He saw a stranger. He saw a wall he couldn't break down. He picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. "I can't believe you would do this to your own family," he muttered, signing his name with a jagged scrawl. "I learned it from you," I said softly. "You taught me that money matters more than people. I'm just finally applying the lesson." He slid the paper to Claire. She cried as she signed it, her tears spotting the ink. I took the document, checked the signatures, and put it back in the binder. I picked up the binder and turned to the door. "Isabella," Mom whispered, "where are you going?" "I'm going to have dinner," I said. "A cheap one that I pay for myself." "Don't come back," Dad said to my back. His voice was hollow. "If you walk out that door with that paper, you don't have a family anymore." I paused at the threshold. I looked out at the cracked driveway, at the weeds, at the setting sun. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a weight I hadn't realized was rushing me until it was gone. "I know," I said, "and honestly, it's the best promotion I've gotten all week." I walked out and I didn't close the door. I let them do it. 3 months later, the autumn leaves were turning gold and red, painting the city in warm, fiery hues. I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, a place I had bought, not rented, sipping a glass of wine. It wasn't Dom Perignon. It was a $20 Pinot Noir, and it was the best thing I had ever tasted. My phone buzzed on the patio table. It was a notification from Credit Karma. Alert, accounts removed, your credit score has increased. I smiled. They had done it. I didn't know how, and I didn't care to know the details, but the debt was gone. I heard through the grapevine, mostly from Aunt Deborah, who had reached out to apologize after the restaurant incident became family gossip, that the fallout had been severe. Grandpa's watch was gone. They couldn't raise the cash in time, and by the time they tried to buy it back from the pawn shop, it had been sold to a collector. Dad was furious, but he had no one to blame but himself. Claire had been forced to get a job, a real one. She was working as a receptionist at a dental office. Apparently, posting office life selfies didn't pay as well as identity theft, but it kept the lights on. She had blocked me on everything, which I considered a service. Mom had tried to call me once, a few weeks ago. She left a voicemail saying she missed me, saying blood is thicker than water. I didn't call back. I had learned that blood might be thicker than water, but it's also a lot harder to clean up when it spills. I took a sip of wine and looked out at the skyline. My new job was demanding, intense, and brilliant. For the first time in my life, I was keeping the money I earned. I had started a retirement fund. I had booked a trip to Italy for the spring, solo. I was building a life that belonged to me, brick by brick. The doorbell rang. I walked inside and checked the peephole. It was David, holding a pizza box and a six-pack of beer. "I come bearing gifts," he shouted through the door, "and the finalized legal release forms." I opened the door and let him in. The smell of pepperoni and yeast filled the apartment, simple, honest smells. "You look different," David said, setting the pizza down on the island. He looked me up and down. "You look lighter." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "So celebrate," he asked, cracking open a beer. "To the director of operations." I took the beer from him and clinked my bottle against his. "No," I said, thinking of the table at l'Orangerie, the empty champagne bottles, the expectant stares, and the moment I finally walked away. "To the director of my own life," I corrected. We drank, we ate pizza, we laughed about work. And for the rest of the night, no one asked me for a loan, no one told me I was difficult, and no one tried to make me pay for a meal I didn't eat. I had lost a family, yes, but looking around my quiet, peaceful home, I realized I hadn't really lost anything at all. I had simply balanced the books. And finally, for the first time in 32 years, I was in the black.